Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk about the last episode of the Obi Wan Kenobi series on Disney Plus. Of course, this Obi Wan Kenobi series is the prequel to Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, and it follows the adventures of Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan Kenobi as he watches over Uh, he's supposed to be watching over Luke on Tatooine, but as we know in other episodes, he is sidetracked and he is now watching over Princess Leia as she is kidnapped by Reva or Reva, the third sister, played by Moses Ingram, who basically wants to get revenge on Anakin Skywalker for killing the younglings at the Jedi Temple when he turned to the dark side. So, what I think about the final episode? Um, the final episode was great. Props to O'Shea Jackson, the son of Ice Cube, who um, is in this new Star Wars. He plays one of the refugees who helps Leia and Obi Wan escape on this other planet. Um, and he did a pretty good job. So maybe they will include his character in other installments, like if they do a season two. Um, the chemistry again between Ewan McGregor and Vivian, um, the girl Vivian that plays the young Princess Leia, fantastic. What he tells her, what he tells her at the end, he kind of clues her in a little bit about who her parents are. He says, that she has qualities that are like Anakin and qualities that are like Padme, and then he wishes that he could tell her more about actually who her parents are. And then we get a cameo from Liam Neeson. A cameo from Liam Neeson, who, of course, in episode one, The Phantom Menace, played the uh, the the master of Obi-Wan, the teacher of Obi-Wan, the mentor of Obi-Wan, the one who made Obi-Wan promise that he would train Anakin as a Jedi because basically Qui-Gon Jinn discovered um, Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine. I feel like I don't have to go into nor explain to any of you guys, especially if you're Star Wars fans, the origins of or the relationship between Liam Neeson's character as Qui-Gon Jinn and Anakin. But basically, it was Qui-Gon Jinn who discovered Anakin Skywalker. He tested Anakin's midichlorian count, and Anakin's midichlorian count was off the charts, higher than Mace Windu's, higher than Yoda's, higher than any other Jedi in history. And it was it was Qui-Gon Jinn who first brought up the possibility that Anakin might be the chosen one. Might be the chosen one in the Jedi prophecy to bring balance to the Force between the sides of the Force, the dark side and the light. So, and of course, we know in episode one at the end, Qui-Gon dies at the hands of Darth Maul. So, all throughout the series, Obi-Wan is searching for, trying to reconnect with his master because at the end of episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Yoda reveals to Obi-Wan that Qui-Gon has actually discovered the secret to immortality, the secret to become a Force ghost. So all throughout the series, Obi-Wan is searching, trying to reconnect with Qui-Gon Jinn. And finally, by surprise, Liam Neeson indicated in other interviews that he would not appear on the Obi-Wan show, but I guess he changed his mind, never say never, and all of a sudden he appears and he tells Obi-Wan, I've been here the whole time. Obi-Wan, you just haven't been looking. So it kind of reminded me of how Yoda appeared to Luke in The Last Jedi, because I thought in my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, Obi Wan is a master. Obi Wan has, has had his own students, has had Anakin as a student. Kind of later has, in the New Hope, has Luke as a student. But even a master, even a student at his high level, still needs a teacher. You never stop needing a teacher. And one thing about this whole series is that Obi Wan is suffering from PTSD. Obi Wan is feeling like he's a failure, that he failed Anakin, that he trained up Anakin as a Jedi, and he didn't really live up to the promise he trained, that Qui Gon wanted from him. Because Qui Gon, of course, he had high expectations for Anakin, and Anakin did not fulfill that. In fact, Anakin didn't destroy the Sith; he became one. Remember what Obi Wan said in episode 3 when he said, "You were supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness." So Obi Wan is kind of feeling like he's the failure, just like Luke in the Last Jedi. Luke, he had a responsibility to train Kylo Ren. Leia entrusted him with that responsibility, and he felt like he failed because Kylo Ren was seduced by Snoke, and Kylo Ren turned to the dark side. So, what we learned from this last battle that Obi Wan has with Darth Vader, in the episode, Darth Vader finally gets a hold of Obi Wan. He tracks Obi Wan down because the third sister put a tracker on Obi Wan. We thought in the second to last episode that the third sister was gonna, redemption is a big thing in Star Wars. I thought she's gonna turn to the light side. She's turning on Darth Vader. She tries to attack Darth Vader, but of course, Darth Vader is so much stronger in the Force that he toys with this woman. She tries to get him from behind. He splits her lightsaber in half. He just beats her ass, right? So she is not able to defeat him. No matter what she does, she tries everything. She's not able to defeat him, but she doesn't really turn to the light side. She still is loyal to him. She still wants to prove herself. We thought that she killed the original Grand Inquisitor. She didn't. The other Grand Inquisitor is still alive, and she's still trying to prove herself to Darth Vader. So she puts a tracker on Obi-Wan. So Obi-Wan leaves Leia. He rescues Leia. The scene where she is almost trying to kill Leia, the theme of killing kids and you know the murder of kids is a big thing in this particular season 1 of the Kenobi series because it focuses on her trauma that she experienced at the hands of Anakin, that she hates Anakin. She hates Darth Vader, but she wants to get so close to him that she is able to kill him. But not only does she hate Anakin, she also hates Obi-Wan because she feels like Obi-Wan failed. She also feels like Obi-Wan failed Anakin, and that was the reason why she went through that trauma. So she wants to kill Anakin. She wants to kill Obi-Wan, and of course, she wants to kill Anakin's children. So when she's torturing Leia, you're like, okay, yeah, she's gonna, maybe Darth Vader's gonna step in. She's not gonna kill Leia because obviously Leia doesn't die till episode 9 in Star Wars. But you're like, the tension is there. You're seeing this little kid get tortured by this grown adult, and it's just really like close to really reality what is really going on. With all these mass shootings, especially the one recently in Texas, it's like it really hits home. And Disney Plus had to put a disclaimer on the beginning of the episode because of what's really going on in real life and how this kind of mirrors it. The whole theme of killing kids. But thankfully, this lady, when she almost has a hold of Luke, she actually tracks Luke down, and Luke is trying to run away, and Uncle Owen, who is totally against Obi-Wan even knowing, Luke even knowing who Obi-Wan even is. he's like against it all. He wants Luke to be completely kept in the dark about his origins and about who he is and about the Jedi. Nothing. He wants Luke to be just a regular boy. And of course, Obi Wan in the beginning, he doesn't want that. He says in a line, and we saw this in the trailer. He says, "When the time is right, he will be trained." And then Uncle Owen says, "Like you trained his father." So basically, when this lady tracks Luke down, Uncle Owen and even Aunt Beru, they try their best to protect um, Luke, but she's strong in the Force. She's a Force user, so of course she overpowers them, and she has Luke at her mercy, and she's about to slice Luke with the lightsaber when she has the flashback of what Anakin did in the temple, and she realizes that she's kind of light. She's becoming what she hated the most. She is becoming like Anakin. She's doing something that Anakin did by killing a child. So she lets Luke live, and um, and in the end, Obi Wan actually gets to speak to Luke because Uncle Owen realizes that this is Luke's destiny. Of course, Star Wars is big on destiny. You hear it all throughout all the trilogies, fulfilling your destiny. Snoke says it to Kylo Ren. Darth Sidious says it to Anakin when he turned to the dark side, and of course, it is said to Luke in the Last Jedi. I mean, not the Last Jedi, in Return of the Jedi, about destiny. Destiny is big in Star Wars. So Uncle Owen realized this is Luke's destiny. But Obi-Wan also realizes that, you gotta let Luke you gotta let a kid be a kid. He should still have his childhood. He should not be robbed of his childhood. He should not have this heavy responsibility of being the savior of the galaxy placed on him at such a young age. He should be allowed to be a kid, and he should be allowed to have his childhood for at least the time being. So, what I want to really talk about is the confrontation between Darth Vader and um, Obi Wan. Now, this is a lot of Star Wars fans are up in arms about this because they think that it goes against the canon. Because of course, in canon, or at least the way that it's made to seem in Episode 4, when Obi Wan and Darth Vader confront each other, that they met on Mustafar. Whatever happened to Anakin happened to him. He got burned up or whatever, and that they never met again. They didn't confront each other again at all. You know what I mean? That this time on the Death Star was the first time in years since the Mustafar battle that they even saw each other. But obviously, this goes back and this retcons that because here they are meeting again. But this was so profound when Obi Wan. There's a scene in there when Obi Wan cuts the mask in half, and he pleads to Anakin. He says, "Anakin, I'm sorry I failed you." And you can see Ewan McGregor's acting is so spectacular in this because you can see Ewan McGregor actually tearing up and actually feeling sad for what his character Obi Wan has done to Anakin. And then Anakin, half of the Darth Vader mask is off. So you see the mask, you see half of the burned face of Anakin, and half of the mask, the Darth Vader mask. And what does he say? He says, Obi Wan, I am not your failure. I You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I killed Anakin Skywalker. So that ties up the loose ends. And then he says, well, then my friend is lost. And then he calls him Darth. For the first time ever, basically, Obi-Wan is accepting that Anakin is now Darth Vader. Because for a while, Obi-Wan, I guess, tried to pull Anakin back to the light side, thought he could save Anakin again and he could bring him back to the light side. But now he's realizing for the first time ever that Anakin really is lost. We know as an audience that, of course, he's not lost, that his son, Luke, will be his redemption. But Obi Wan can't do it. Even the friendship, even the bond that they've had since basically childhood, the brotherhood that they had, even that is not strong enough to bring Anakin back to the light side. He needed the love of his son. But this ties up the loose ends of why does Obi-Wan say in episode 4 that it was Darth Vader who killed Anakin Skywalker? Why what's the canon reason? Now, for the first time ever, it is Anakin himself as Darth Vader acknowledging that the Darth Vader side of himself killed his good side. That he believes that it was him becoming Darth Vader that actually destroyed Anakin Skywalker, and he's taking full responsibility for it, saying that he is not the failure. His creation as Darth Vader is not the failure of Obi Wan, but of the will of himself. He wanted to do it. He wanted to turn to the dark side. He made that choice. It was not the choice of Obi Wan to make. It was the choice of himself to make. So that so that was really profound. And again, what the highlights of this, the scene when Obi Wan for the last time visits Leia, and what he says to her, how he compares her to her mother and father, and he basically tells her, the truth, what she's always been wanting to hear. Who is she really? He doesn't tell her everything, but he tells her, what a 10-year-old can bear. And then he gives her the woman that's been protecting them for throughout the series. That basically was the mole inside the Empire to carry them across. He gives her holster, and smart ass Leia says, "But it's not loaded." And Obi Wan says, "Well, Leia, of course, I'm not. I'm not going to give you a loaded blaster. I'm not going to give you a loaded gun. You're only 10 years old." But she says it's empty, and he says, "Yeah, but it won't always be empty." In other words, even at this young age, he is entrusting Leia with leadership, because Leia. It's not Luke, but Leia who leads first the rebellion and then the resistance throughout the entire series of the Skywalker saga. It is Leia who has that responsibility placed on her. It is her that fights the war. It is her that, like her mother, just like her son wanted to finish what his grandfather started, she wanted to finish what her mother started. It was her mother and her stepfather, her adopted father, Bail Organa, the two politicians from the old republic who started the rebellion in the first place, who said, "No, we're not just going to let Palpatine steamroll over everybody. We're going to start a rebellion, and we're going to plant that seeds of the rebellion." Unfortunately, Padme did not live to see that, but it was through her daughter's legacy that eventually she was able to achieve that. So we see the growth in the character of the little girl Leia, because remember, in the beginning of the series, Leia really didn't want to be involved with politics. Her mother was trying to get her into meet with these politicians, these other senators, and she was she was switching out her clothes. She was switching her clothes with an alien. She didn't. She wanted to avoid politics entirely because she saw through the she saw through the lies and everything. But again, her destiny. This is her destiny. Her destiny is to lead the rebellion against um, the Empire and to be the general that she's supposed to be. And she cannot escape this destiny. Just like her brother Luke cannot escape his destiny. Just like her father Obi Wan. Excuse me, not Obi Wan. Anakin could not escape his destiny. Her destiny was to be what her destiny was to be. You know. So At the end, she realizes, look, I can't escape this. I'm just gonna have to roll with it, and she becomes the leader that she should be, even at this very tender young age of 10. And Obi Wan, he rides off into the sunset, and he lives to fight another day, and he realizes that he's not his greatest failure. Yeah, he made mistakes, and he was unable to train Anakin the way he was, but Anakin could not escape it. This was Anakin's destiny. Anakin was meant to fall and then be redeemed by his own son. It was not Obi Wan that could redeem him, but his son Luke that could redeem him. It was, again, the biblical imagery within Star Wars. It's not through the father and through the older generation that humanity and the world and the galaxy or whatever could be redeemed, but not through the father, but through the son. You know, so Obi Wan could have tried everything, and still nothing was going to redeem Anakin Skywalker, and nothing was going to redeem the galaxy except for Luke Skywalker. Everybody had their destiny, everybody has their role to play in Star Wars. But overall, I liked it. Again, the prequels, because this was a salute to the prequels, because Disney understands that there are OG trilogy fans, and what Rogue One was to the fans of the original trilogy, what Rogue One was to especially fans of the original movie, the original Star Wars movie from 1977. It was a salute to that sort of era, that sort of homage. This was to prequel fans. Prequel fans, and there are prequel fans out there. Yes, many people shit on the prequels. Many people didn't like the prequels. Many people thought the prequels were boring or they dragged on too much. By comparison, too much politics. And I say there were there were problems with the prequels. There were problems with episodes 1 through 3. But again, I grew up in this era, so it's sort of like 90s wrestling. People that grew up in the 80s, they're going to say the Hulkamania era and the era of the original NWA with Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair and all that was the best era of professional wrestling. And I like that era too, but again, that era doesn't hold the memories to me like my era holds. Just like with hip hop, I could like the new hip hop that is out right now, the new rappers that are out right now, and a lot of the newer rappers, but it doesn't hold the nostalgia for me like the music that I grew up with, the Nas's, the Jay Z, the Tupacs, and the Biggies, because I was there to experience it. I've seen it. You know what I mean? So just like with this, yeah, of course I love the original trilogy. Who doesn't love the original trilogy? If it wasn't for the original trilogy, there wouldn't be a prequel trilogy. But again, I went to the movies to see the prequel trilogy. I saw all the prequels as they came out. I always appreciated the story that George Lucas was at least trying to tell. Were there problems with the prequels? Yes. Were there problems with the way they were executed? Are they the best films to watch as far as films go, or even as far as Star Wars films go? No. But they hold a special place in my heart because I experienced them. I remember the feeling in 1999 when the Phantom Menace was coming out. The feeling back then was for everybody whose father or some kind of male figure in their life was a Star Wars fan and exposed them to, I say male, it could be female too, but most likely it was male. You know what I mean? Um, Exposed them to Star Wars on VHS. And then they grew up in 1996 to play the video game, especially Shadows of the Empire, that video game for N64, which my friend Josh loaned me in the sixth grade, and I borrowed it for a couple of weeks, and you know I loved it, and that really inspired me to go back again as a more mature 12-year-old and watch the VHS. And then when they did the re-releases in '97, that was my era, and that era was special to me. So by the time 1999 rolled around, I was so excited to finally see a Star Wars movie, an original Star Wars movie, in theaters. You know what I mean? Because the re-releases in '97, yeah, that was big, that was huge. Watching them on VHS in the early '90s with my stepdad and stuff was big. But to actually go and see it in the theaters, you know what I mean? A new Star Wars in 1999, the hysteria, the mania that was around it, the expectations we had. And sometimes we set ourselves up with too high of an expectations. We expected too much, especially the newer generation, the millennials like me. We expected too much. You know what I mean? We wanted it to be like it was in the '70s. We wanted it to specifically be like Empire Strikes Back, but nothing could ever be that good. Empire Strikes Back was such a classic film, such a crescendo, such a pinnacle that there was nothing that could top it. It was sort of like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson um, released Thriller, and Thriller is universally considered to be the greatest musical album ever. And one thing about it was he never was able to recapture that same magic. So George Lucas, George Lucas was similar. George Lucas reached such a high pinnacle in movies and such a high pinnacle in the science fiction subgenre that he was never able to top it again. 1980, Empire Strikes Back was his pinnacle, and he went just down from there. You know, so in 1999, we had such high expectations. My generation, we're like, oh, can only get better from here. What's he gonna come out with? What's he gonna come out with? And then when he finally comes out with Jake Lloyd and 9-year-old Anakin Skywalker, Little Orphan Annie, and Jar Jar Binks, we were all left sitting on our hands, like, you know, especially looking at Jar Jar Binks and looking at Anakin Skywalker as a little kid, and we're like, what the fuck is this shit? you know, like we wanted it to be so good, you know what I mean? But it could never be that way. You know, our expectations were just too high, but still we stuck with it. And over time, as the older generation of Star Wars fans completely trashed the original, the prequel trilogy, over time, people like me that had grown up with it, and we grew to appreciate it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like when you didn't like let's say you didn't like a girl, or you didn't like her at first. Like you're like, oh well, she's not my type. She's kind of, I'm not physically attracted to her, but over time, as she spends time with you and you grow to familiarize yourself with her, and you find out that she is really deep, that she is really profound, eventually you grow to love her. And that was kind of like us with the prequels, especially in 2005. In 2005, when Revenge of the Sith came out, it was like, okay, this is what we wanted. This is what we wanted them all to be. We wanted them all to be this. Like they couldn't, but we wanted them all to be. And they were always your prequel defenders, and you know, other people like Mr. Plinkett that said the prequels suck. You know what I mean? And I don't love the prequels, but they are what they are. And Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman, they tried. They worked with what they were given. and Jake Lloyd. It wasn't the best, but it's sort of like Jim Cornette always says. I thought you were the biggest asshole, so other assholes came around and forced you to move up a notch. So we thought the prequels were the worst, but then the sequels came out, and the sequels were even worse than the prequels. So we're like, okay, yeah, the prequels wasn't so bad, I guess. And we didn't know what we had until we lost it, and that was the case with George Lucas. Yes, George Lucas is not dead, but once he was removed from Star Wars and once Disney took over, it's like, okay, we thought you were bad, but Disney is 10 times worse. So if you think the prequels are bad, The Last Jedi is the fucking worst movie ever made. You know, and again, I think that this newer generation will, in some ways, they will grow to appreciate the sequels in the way we did with the prequels because their parents exposed them to Star Wars in the beginning with the prequels and the originals, and over time they will watch the sequels with a brand new eye. And I predict in the future they will grow to feel about Daisy Ridley and John Boyega and Oscar Isaac and even Kelly Marie Tran and those people associated with the sequel era the same way we do about the prequel era. It just whatever era you grew up in, that's what you love because that's what you remember. It's just like music. People that were alive in the 60s and the 70s, of course they love classic soul, they love Motown. And they said that Tupac was shit. They said that Biggie was shit. People that grew up in the earlier era of hip hop, the Zulu Nation era or Rapper's Delight era or even the Rakim and Big Daddy Kane era, to them that was the classic because that was the time they grew up in. And it's sort of like um, uh, suspended appreciation in a sense because you have a certain nostalgia attached to that particular piece of art that you don't have attached to another particular piece of art. You have memories attached to that, whereas you don't have memories attached to necessarily of a previous era, and you don't have necessarily opinions attached to an era, um, after that. You know what I mean? So um, this this show was in a sense, a salute, an appreciation, something for the prequel fans, something for the fans that grew up on the Star Wars films of the '90s and the 2000s to enjoy and to like. Of course, the fans that were from the '70s and '80s, and the sequel fans, if they are any, most of them are probably kids, you know, 8, 9, 10, because again, what Star Wars fans don't want to accept, what they don't want to realize, is that George Lucas was right. You know, Star Wars is meant for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 year old kids. It's not for 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 35-year-old men. You know, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I mean, really, it's for kids of all ages. But again, when you approach it, you have to approach it with a child's mindset. What you see with a lot of these, the stuff like Marvel, um, Star Wars stuff, and a lot of wrestling stuff too, is you guys forget what it was like to be a kid. You know what I mean? The kind of naivete that you had when you were a child, that you when you watched this stuff, when you fell in love with this stuff. You forget that kind of newness that was in your eyes, that glimmer, that shine that was in your eyes when you were a kid, and you had virgin eyes, and you weren't so jaded, and you weren't so critical. You forget what that was like. You know what I mean? Because now you're an adult and you're like, well, why isn't it living up to my expectations? Why isn't it like it was? It's never going to be that way because you're never going to be that young again. You're never going to be that innocent again. So unless you can watch it with a child's eyes and with a child's mindset, you can never grow to appreciate it in the same way that you did when you were a kid. Because one thing I remember, okay, this is 1999, and I ain't gonna front. In 1999, I was about 14, 15, around that age, a little bit past the age of, you know, being deeply into Star Wars, but I liked Star Wars since I was, 11, 12, around there, and even before that, 7, 8, 9. So, I, but again, it was the first time, and I liked the Phantom Menace at first. Okay, when I watched Attack of the Clones, I didn't like it as much, and then Revenge of the Sith, I did like it. I did enjoy it. But when I watched the sequel trilogy, like when I went to see The Force Awakens, I thought it was a good movie. But again, when I watched it, I didn't look at it with such a critical eye like y'all did. I looked at The Last Jedi. I looked at The Last Jedi like that. I can't front because it was trying to be something that it wasn't. It was trying to be overly complicated. It was trying to be overly philosophical, and it was kind of feeding into that high mindedness of the fan base, which was Star Wars was never meant to be. People analyze Star Wars. People um, overestimate the importance of it in a sense, and it is profound. It is deep. Some of its themes, I ain't gonna front, but at the same time, it's a child's movie. It's a movie for 8, 9, 10, 11 year olds, and you can't approach it. You can't approach it like it's fucking Citizen Kane. Like, and people do this. People do this with wrestling too. It's like, okay, you can like when Hornswoggle was out, you complain about Hornswoggle, you complain about all this childish stuff that you see on WWE, but it's wrestling. Remember what it was like when you were 10, when you were 11, when you were 12, and you watched it for the first time, and you were in awe about how cool it was and how it inspired you. And as you become older, yeah, it doesn't have the same effect because you're older, you're more mature, so it can never have the same effect. And a perfect example is like that with me. 1999, I was still young yet. I was still, a child, and I still was a kind of a teenager, but I liked it. I liked the hysteria around it. Certain parts of it were kind of boring, but I liked it still. And when I went to see the Phantom Menace again in 2012 when they did the re-releases, and I watched it, with my daughter at that time, I didn't like it as much. I was like, yeah, I see what they mean. This is a boring ass movie. You know what I mean? But it was because I wasn't young. I wasn't that young again. You know what I mean? Like, and I saw it through different eyes. You know what I mean? So you can't approach something like this with such a critical eye. Remember that it's a children's movie in the end of the day, and it's a movie for children, and they're children of all ages. But don't don't overanalyze it. Don't cut it into pieces. Accept it for what it is. Accept it for what George Lucas intended it to be. You know what I mean? Too many people, like the internet has given such people a platform that they dissect every little thing, and they make you hate everything because they want you to approach everything with such a critical lens. But anyway, overall, I thought the series was good. I don't think this needs a season two. I think dragging it out to a season two or season three, like the story that was meant to be told was Obi Wan coming to terms and coming to a peace with himself and what happened in the past. It doesn't need to have several seasons. This is what it is. It's a nod to the prequel trilogy and those who loved and grew up with the prequel trilogy, and that's all it needs to be. You know, I'm sure Disney will drag this out, and Disney will make several versions of this, but it doesn't need to be made. You know, making several versions of it would just be beating a dead horse. This is what it is. It's a salute to the prequel era. It is an homage to the prequel era, and that's all it needs to be. You know, and you know, like Tika Waititi said, one of the creators of particularly behind the Mandalorian. Okay, it's time to move beyond the Skywalkers. The Star Wars universe is bigger than the Skywalkers. There are other people in the universe. There are other things going on than just the Skywalkers. I mean, just telling the story of the Skywalkers would be like telling American history with just the Kennedys. You know, or telling British history with just the royal family, like is often done, like in shows, Netflix shows like The Crown. You know, you got to. There are other things going on. There are other things you can focus on, and the Mandalorian has done a great job with that. The Mandalorian has no Skywalker. Well, now it has Skywalkers in it with Luke, and you know, in the book of Boba Fett, but there are other stories to tell. And for a while, especially in season one of The Mandalorian, that's what they were doing. That's what Rogue One did. That was so great. There was no Skywalkers in that except for Leia at the end. And I wanted to talk a little bit too about the de aging technology that they used on Hayden Christensen. Um, yeah, Hayden Christensen obviously he's a lot older now. He looks different than he did in episodes two and three, and they wanted to show that flashback scene with him and Obi Wan fighting on the in the temple, sparring in the temple, and they used the bad de aging. They didn't use any de aging technology, and then some guy on YouTube did it. But that's what it is with Star Wars. Star Wars fans have always assumed that they know better than the creators of Star Wars how to create Star Wars. You know, we've seen fan editings of the Phantom Menace, fan editings of the Last Jedi, fan editings of the prequels entirely. People picking apart pieces and pieces. That's one thing that Star Wars fans are very interactive. Sometimes too much. Sometimes they become a little bit toxic. But Star Wars fans always feel like they have ownership over what George Lucas has created. What George Lucas created in the mind of George Lucas, then they know better than George Lucas, and that now better than Disney on what Star Wars should be. That's just how it's always been. You know, sometimes you create an idea, you put an idea into the zeitgeist, into the atmosphere, and it migrates to other places and in the hands of other people, and it takes on a new life and something different that even the creators and the originators of it never meant to be. We see that all the time with religions. In a sense, you could say that Jediism and the main philosophical driving force of Star Wars as a whole took on Buddhist concepts, Hindu concepts, um, concepts of history, concepts of mythology, and reformed it and reshaped it into a modern American um, late 20th century concept, and they created something different. So Star Wars fans have took what he created, what George Lucas created, and made something completely different, or what Disney created and made something completely different. So we're seeing a kind of organic process. That's probably what they did. Not only with religions like with the Quran or with the New Testament or with the Old Testament back in the day, but they probably also did that with ancient mythologies, like the writings of Hesiod, um, the writings of Aeschylus, the writings of Euripides, the philosophical underpinnings of Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. They probably took that and they remade something completely different. We know that the reinterpreting, the reimagining is exactly what the writers of the New Testament did to the Old Testament. It was the writers of the New Testament that placed the emphasis on the book of Isaiah in the first place. You know, as ideas, concepts, and creations migrate to other places, they take on new lives and new forms. We see that with even criminal organizations. As the mafia migrated from out of Sicily to America, it became something completely different in America than it was in Sicily. Same thing with street gangs. As they migrated from one part of the country to another, particularly from California or Chicago to places like New York, they took on more of the culture and more of the atmosphere of New York. As places, ideas, and things migrate from one place to another, they take on a new life and a new form. That's what always happens. So the whole de aging thing with Hayden Christensen, I thought it was pretty cool. I think it's cool how fans on YouTube are really taking the initiative when it comes to things like that. Um. Anyway, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And by the way, this weekend I will be doing a video on my opinion of the whole Vince McMahon situation. A lot of people are asking what do I think about the whole Vince situation. What do I think about the $3 million payoff with Vince? Paying off an intern to make rape allegations go away. Honestly, if you read Sean Assel's book, uh, Sex Lies and Headlocks, that came out in 2002, you realize that this is nothing new with Vince McMahon. He's been he's been trying to make rape allegations and pedophilia allegations go away for the longest. He's been dealing in a lot of underhanded shit since the beginning of his career in professional wrestling. Hell, he freaking um you know got Jimmy Snuka off in way back in 1983. So it's nothing new with him in wrestling itself. The idea of wrestling has its origins in the seedy white underbelly, to quote a famous YouTuber of the world. It is part of the underworld, as they tie it back into Star Wars, that they would say in Star Wars. If wrestling existed within the Star Wars universe, wrestling would be controlled by the Black Sun Syndicate or um, the Golden Dawn Syndicate or by the Huts, some kind of organized crime organization or criminal organization. If professional wrestling existed in the Star Wars universe, that is the aesthetic of wrestling. That is basically what wrestling is, an outgrowth, just like boxing and MMA, of seedy underbelly, under underhand and underbelly seediness that somehow morphed into children's entertainment in the 80s thanks to Vince. But I will be doing a video on how this could be the destruction of Vince, how this could mean the destruction of professional wrestling, and what him stepping down means for wrestling. And to tie it back into Disney and Star Wars again, I don't think that WWE should be sold to Disney or any other kind of parent organization if it's not Peacock. If it ain't Peacock, they shouldn't sell to it because they're already doing business with Peacock. They've been doing business with Dick Ebersol ever since the late 80s. So, yeah. Anyway, peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Love you guys, and may the force be with you always.